My wife walked in on me while I was watching porn. In a panic reflex, I instantly changed to a random channel, the fishing channel. As my wife walks out again, she says, "You should stay on the porn channel. You know how to fish." The military is cutting staff and decided to get rid of 3 generals. One from the Army, the Air Force, and the Marines. All of them are old, grizzled men who had seen their fair share of war, so the Pentagon came up with a unique bonus system for their service. They can choose 2 points on their bodies, and for every inch between them, they would get 10,000. First up was the Army general. He chose to measure between the tips of his middle fingers with his arms spread wide. Second was the Air Force, who chose the top of his head to the soles of his feet. Then came the Marine general. "I want you to measure from the tip of my dick to my balls." The men running the measuring laughed and then asked him, seriously, where he wanted to measure. "I am being serious. Now start measuring." The men tried to dissuade him, but he was adamant. Finally, resigned, one of the men takes the measuring tape and goes to take the measurement. When the general removed his pants, the man jumped up in alarm. "Sir, where are your balls?" He replied, "In Vietnam." A man lost one of his arms in an accident. One day he felt terribly depressed and decided to end his life. He went to the top of a building to jump off and was standing on the ledge looking down when he saw this man skipping along, whistling and kicking up his heels. He looked closer and saw this man didn't have any arms at all. He started thinking, what am I doing up here feeling sorry for myself? I still have one good arm to do things with. There goes a man with no arms skipping down the sidewalk happy and going on with his life. He hurried down to the street and caught up to the man with no arms. He told him how glad he was to see him because he had lost one of his arms and felt ugly and useless and was going to kill himself. He thanked him for saving his life, adding he knew he could make it with one arm if that guy could go on with no arms. The man with no arms began dancing and kicking up his heels again. The one-armed man asked, "Why are you so happy anyway?" The man with no arms replied, "I'm not happy. My ass itches." A blonde was on vacation in the depths of Louisiana. She wanted a pair of genuine alligator shoes, but didn't want to pay the high prices. After unsuccessfully haggling with one of the shopkeepers, the blonde said, "Maybe I'll just go out and catch my own alligator so I can get a pair of shoes at a reasonable price." Later in the day, the shopkeeper spotted the young woman standing waist-deep in the water, shotgun in hand. She took aim at an alligator, killed it, and hauled it onto the swamp bank. Lying nearby were several more of the dead creatures. The shopkeeper watched in amazement as the blonde flipped the alligator on its back and shouted in frustration, "Damn, this one isn't wearing any shoes either." There's this blonde. She gets on a plane and sits in the first available seat. The flight attendant is coming around checking tickets. She looks at the blonde woman's ticket and tells the blonde, "Ma'am, you can't sit here. Your ticket says coach, and this is first class. Please move to the back of the plane." The blonde replies, "I'm a blonde, I'm smart, and I have a good job. I'm not moving until the plane arrives in Jamaica." So, the flight attendant, now hot under the collar at the blonde's response, goes to another flight attendant and tells him what happened. So he goes up to her and asks her to move to the back of the plane. She then responds, "I'm a blonde, I'm smart, and have a good job. I'm not moving until the plane arrives in Jamaica." So the 2 flight attendants are steaming mad, and they go to the co-pilot and tells him what is going on. He comes back to where the blonde is sitting and leans over and whispers something in her ear. The 2 flight attendants were astonished when the blonde abruptly got up from her seat and moved to the back of the plane. They looked at each other, and then the co-pilot asked him what he told her. The co-pilot, feeling good about himself, told them, "Oh, this happened a while back with someone else. I just simply told the woman that the front half of the plane wasn't going to Jamaica." While an old man lay dying in his bedroom, his family sat in the living room discussing his funeral arrangements. Son Arthur said, "We'll make a really big thing out of it. We'll have 500 people and we'll order 50 limos." Daughter Emily disagreed. "Why do you want to waste money like that? We'll have the family and just a few friends. 1 limo for us will be plenty." Grandson Jim proposed, "We'll have lots of flowers. We'll surround him with dozens of roses and lilies." Granddaughter Kylie said, "That's a complete waste. Well, have one little bouquet. That will be enough. Eventually, the rest of the family agreed that it would be foolish to spend lots of money on the funeral. They would keep costs down to the bare minimum. His son Edward said, "No use throwing money away." Suddenly, the voice of the old man could be heard wafting weakly from the bedroom. "Why don't you get me my trousers? I will walk to the cemetery." Mrs. Taylor, the 6th grade teacher, posed the following problem to one of her classes. A wealthy man dies and leaves $10 million. 1/5 is to go to his wife, 1/5 is to go to his son, 1/6 to his butler, and the rest to charity. Now, what does each get? After a very long silence in the classroom, Little Johnny raised his hand. The teacher called on Little Johnny for his answer. Little Johnny answered, "A lawyer." A guy goes to confession and says, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned. On Friday, I went golfing, and I used the F word." The priest says, "Tell me about it, my son." The man says, "I was on the first tee, and I shanked a shot wide left." The priest says, "Oh, you must have said it then." The man said, "No, because the ball went into the woods, hit a tree, and bounced back right in the middle of the fairway." The priest asks, "And then what happened?" The man says, "I hit my second shot, and the ball went wide right." The priest asks, "So that's when you said it?" The man replies, "No, because my shot hit the ball washer machine on the next hole, popped up, and wound up right in the low rough." So the priest says, "Oh, so that's when you said it then?" He said, "No, because I took my wedge and hit it, and it wound up on the green, about 6 inches from the cup." There's silence for a while, and then the priest says, "Don't tell me you missed that fucking putt." A kindergarten teacher is trying to explain to her class the definition of the word definitely. To make sure the students have a good understanding of the word, she asks them to use it in a sentence. A student in the front raises her hand and says, "The sky is definitely blue." The teacher says, "Well, that isn't entirely correct because sometimes it's gray and cloudy." Another student says, "Grass is definitely green." The teacher again replies, "If grass doesn't get enough water, it turns brown, so that isn't really correct either." Finally, Billy raises his hand and asks the teacher, "Do farts have lumps?" The teacher looks at Billy and says, "That isn't really a question you want to ask in class discussion, but..." "No." Billy replies, "Then I definitely just shit my pants." An old man lived alone in Idaho. He wanted to spade his potato garden, but it was very hard work. His only son, Bubba, who used to help him, was in prison. The old man wrote a letter to his son and described his predicament. "Dear Bubba, I am feeling pretty bad because it looks like I won't be able to plant my potato garden this year. I'm just getting too old to be digging up a garden plot. If you were here, all my troubles would be over. I know you would dig the lot for me. Love, Dad." A few days later, he received a letter from his son. "Dear Dad, for heaven's sake, Dad, don't dig up that garden. That's where I hid the money. Love, Bubba." At 4 the next morning, FBI agents and local police showed up and dug up the entire area without finding any money. They apologized to the old man and left. That same day, the old man received another letter from his son. "Dear Dad, go ahead and plant the potatoes now. That's the best I could do under the circumstances."